Jian Ghomeshi is arguably one of the CBC's biggest stars, and on Friday it was revealed that he was going to be stepping away due to some personal issues. And then, of course, by the end of the weekend, the CBC and Ghomeshi were the biggest story across our country. The allegations of a major sex scandal involving, according to the Star, 3 women who claim he was violent during non-consensual sex. Let's bring in JJ McCullough to talk about the bigger picture of this story. Good to have you, sir.
Good to be
So,
here.
no complaint, no charges right now. The CBC doesn't and isn't commenting on the story, so we haven't heard from them. But no matter what, let me ask you this first. Is someone's private sex life our business?
Well, I think that if the life crosses the line between sex life and sex crimes, it is certainly our business, and we should be very clear that what is being alleged are sex crimes. I mean, this is the claim of non-consensual abusive sex as well as sexual harassment. I mean, there is not only the 3 women that claim that they were subject to abusive non-consensual sex at the hands of Ghomeshi, but also a 4th woman who claims that he was sexually harassing her in the workplace. So these are very serious allegations, and I mean, it's in his interest to sort of frame this as just gossip about his personal sex life, and I mean, he explicitly says that the CBC only fired him because they found his sex life untoward, which is a sort of whole other can of worms we can get into. But no, I mean, the substance of this is the man a sex criminal or not? And I think that where it's very much in the public interest to determine whether or not the CBC is keeping sort of accused sex criminals in their employ.
Yeah, I mean, according to the Star, the women who are now accusing Ghomeshi of violence started as fans. There will be a lot of defenders of Mr. Ghomeshi. We're seeing that already online. What's interesting to me is that these women who, according to the Star, talked to the Star, didn't go to the police on this, but they're too scared to come forward. They're too scared to report this because of retaliation, which says to me that we've got a bigger cultural problem on this issue.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I mean, this is why I believe this story has tremendous legs, because it very much hits a nerve and sort of part of this larger discussion that we as a culture have been having, particularly in online forums, about sort of the nature of so-called rape culture within society. The idea that it is sort of broader society makes it very difficult for a lot of women to come forward with tales of sexual abuse. You know, that we have a culture that tends to blame the victims who come forward, or that sort of establishment networks tend to protect the accused over the accusers, and this sort of thing. So I do think, particularly, I mean, what's particularly fascinating to me is that Jian Ghomeshi is a sort of progressive hero. The CBC is a very progressive institution, but now it's very much sort of dividing its base against itself. Yeah. Because on the one hand, you have his fans who are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and to see him as a symbol of the CBC. And then, of course, on the other hand, you have this kind of large sort of grassroots sort of feminist movement online who campaign very vigorously against what they perceive to be rape culture, and particularly the sort of old boys networks who defend their own. And I mean, this is what is very striking to me, because Ghomeshi very much claims that the CBC was satisfied with his tale of events, that they were very satisfied that, you know, his storyline, which is that these women are basically conspiring against him and that they're all sort of puppets of this jilted ex-girlfriend, in his words, who's sort of been trying to cobble together this conspiracy to discredit him, and that any sex that he had with these women was completely consensual. Well, the CBC brass, at least in his retelling of this story, buys into that. And if true, it could be very, very damning to the CBC's reputation, because it does play in to this larger narrative of sort of a rape culture. Because again, it's like, how seriously do you take the allegations of the women versus how seriously do you take Ghomeshi's sort of framing of things? And on the internet, in the modern internet culture, a lot of people are inclined to take the women's side of things unquestionably.
I don't know. You know, a lot of people, I've been reading it both ways. I mean, if you go to the fan pages, there are a lot of people defending Mr. Ghomeshi. You know, but as one article illustrates, I think it's in the Huffington Post, it's not enough you know, to like Jian Ghomeshi just to completely like throw these suggestions or allegations out the door. I mean, what I think is important here is that let the facts come out. We have only heard his side, and we've only heard through a Toronto Star investigation what these women are saying. They haven't actually put forward a formal complaint. But what struck me the most, and you've touched upon it a couple of times, is this fourth woman who, according to the Toronto Star, said that Mr. Ghomeshi had come to her at work and said something very suggestive, which I can't say on TV. I want to blank you. The Star claims she went to the union. The union then went to the managing producer of Q. And then that producer is said, according to the Star, to have said, what could she have done to make this a less toxic workplace, which, if true, suggests, and a lot of people will question, what kind of culture is at the CBC, because it is suggested that this fourth woman inevitably left the corporation. And you can only assume that it was because of what she alleges happened. So yes. A lot of people will be questioning, what kind of work environment is going on.
Yes, no, I mean, so this is a storyline that plays out on several fronts. So on the one hand, you have this story in which she complained to her union, the union went to the producer, and then, as you said, the producer basically said, it's, I mean, in so many words, it's kind of your fault, or at least the onus is on you to diffuse this situation. So then you do have this idea that the CBC is trying to protect their big star and is trying to sort of dismiss or make complaints go away by framing them as sort of being the hysterics of the woman making the accusations. I mean, and this in turn is sort of borne out by the claims of the women as articulated in the Star piece, which is that Jian Ghomeshi sort of has used his fame to essentially bully these women sexually. That he encounters them in sort of high-profile public circumstances in which he is being the star, public gatherings at which he's the guest of honor or whatnot, then uses that fame to ask them out, and that they're sort of somewhat intimidated by his fame, and then he uses that to abuse them sexually, and then essentially his high profile and then keeps them silent because they know if they were to go public with their charges that he could use his power to smear them, or their names, if nothing else, would be dragged through the mud. And